where we are. All right, we are live streaming. Let me just double check. Yep, we are live. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about probate and estate planning. So I'm Jen Jones with Jones & Jones Realty, and we have attorney Brian Roode with Legacy Counsellors here with us. And we're going to chat more about what is probate, how does estate planning play into that? When should you start doing your estate planning? It's not just for older folks. It's actually for people who, have some things and want to be able to plan for the future. But I'm going to let the expert, attorney Brian Roode, take care of that. So Brian, tell us a little bit about Legacy Counsellors, and we'll just get right into it with what's probate.
Sure, absolutely. So again, Brian Roode with Legacy Counsellors. We are a law firm that primarily deals with estate planning, real estate, and probate administration. So all of those topics we're kind of going to hit upon today are things we do here at Legacy Counsellors. But probate, and what is it, right? It's a mystical thing. No, it's a court process in which it deals with wrapping up end of life matters. Things that you would have been able to do for yourself when you were alive still need to get wrapped up afterwards, such as selling real estate, paying bills, dealing with your personal property, dealing with your accounts, bank accounts, all those types of things. And certainly estate planning and how that happens all factors into the process. Anything you have to do with the court, obviously it costs money and takes time because it is a government entity that is not as efficient as something in the private sector, perhaps.
Yeah, and so let's, kind of back it out a little bit. Some people might hear the word probate, they're not quite sure. You just explained it. And, who might find themselves in a position where they have to go through the probate process?
So anyone that dies that didn't properly get their property out of their name before death, essentially. It can be, as simple as a bank account. It can be real estate. It could be a car. Any of those things are things that might have to go through probate. They're titled items, and you can't just go in if you don't own it and take it. So
Or sell it, right?
Or sell it. Exactly. So
all right,
that's who needs to go into probate.
Right. And so how can someone, so if, we're talking about these things, bank accounts, cars, property, etc. So who can, I guess, avoid the probate process? Does that where will come now? And this is just Massachusetts, correct?
So generally speaking, yeah, I'm talking in Massachusetts, but most of the probate process and estate planning techniques are going to be across the board. As estate planners, our goal is to avoid probate. We come up with as many things as possible to avoid it, depending on the individual circumstances. Every single person's life is different. Who they have in their life is different. Who they trust, who they want their property to pass on to. All of those things are factored in, and we try to keep it out of court because, again, it's a timely, costly thing to do, to stay or to go through probate.
So it's like a fraction of the cost, shall we say, to hire an attorney to do estate planning. And when I say estate planning, what am I talking about? What are some of the things that someone could do to pre-plan so that, maybe family members or friends or whoever is around to sort of take care of the end of life stuff doesn't have to go through probate? So what are some of those estate planning tools?
So the tools that are using to avoid probate are things like adding person's name to title, creating a life estate in their real property with a remainder interest to somebody else. So upon their death, that real estate would automatically vest with the remainder interest, as opposed to having to go through a probate process. Same with bank accounts, things of that nature. Everyone knows the general document of a will. That actually is the document that's used to start the probate process. So it's kind of we do a will for everybody, even if we do things like a revocable living trust, we might move things into a trust to avoid probate, whether it be revocable or irrevocable. That again, that's a different conversation. But yeah, so those are the things we do to avoid probate. The will is that catch-all in case there was property that wasn't known about or wasn't dealt with properly. The will then allows somebody to go into probate, appointing somebody as the personal representative and, wrapping things up through the court process. Real estate's,
Yeah, so a will doesn't preclude you from the probate going to probate. You still have to get
right.
I might use the wrong word, appointed as the person to be able to sell
Yep.
or use the
Yeah, so let's look at somebody that owns
yeah.
real estate but doesn't do any estate planning, right? They pass away, the title to the house is in their name. If they do have a will, it'll go into probate. Somebody will be appointed, and assuming that will was drafted properly, it should have what's called a power to sell. So that person, the personal representative, has the authority then to act to sell the real property. If you didn't have a properly drafted will, or you didn't have a will at all, we would still go into probate court. It's now called intestate, in which there's no will, which means there's no power to sell. So you have to go further into the probate process and get what's called a license to sell. Again, further into the process, i.e., more money, longer time.
And it's interesting you say that, because more and more I've seen over the last few months is, subject to probate, subject to license to sell, subject to. So I've seen a lot of that happening. So some people are not doing the planning necessary to make it easier for, we'll say family for the lack of a better word, but the person who is going to take care of their things gets stuck in this process. And it's not, like you said, it's a very time consuming process, especially, we're talking about the state. And, I know someone who's been in, probate since the beginning of the year. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole mess in and of itself. And so, as the trusted advisor of somebody, when would you suggest bringing in a realtor like myself, if they do have property that needs to be sold or should be sold?
So, with anything, quite frankly, I believe in getting a team together as early as possible. If you get the attorney, the realtor, as an attorney, I know how to work my way through the probate process. I know how to get the paperwork to where that we can actually sell the house, but I don't know when the right time to sell is. I don't know when the right time to clean it out or make repairs to get top dollar, and return on investment. That's not what I do. So I would bring a realtor in right at the very beginning. I want to know what the property is worth. I want to know, what needs to be done. How is it a hoarding situation? Is it, does it need to clean out? Does it need repairs? Was there a lot of deferred maintenance that really should be addressed before we list it to get a better dollar value for the house? And that's the realtor's job. So believe me, I would never want to guess those things. I
Right.
want a professional and somebody that's familiar with the probate process, because a lot of realtors haven't dealt with that before, and it makes a big difference in the way to do things.
Yeah, and I think just, because I've seen so much of it, it really spurred me to say, hey, Brian, let's go on live. Let's like do some education on what is probate, how does that work for someone, and how to start the process early on. And so if you don't have a will, or even if you do have a will and you want someone to review it, Brian can do that and really advise you. Obviously, it's on a case by case basis on how to move forward, but bringing in what they already have, if they have something, to be able to go through and say, okay, what do you have? What are your assets? What can we do to, help with the process? And I think the earlier, the better in that case,
Mm-hmm.
because you never know. I mean, life is far too short these days. As we've gotten older, older too. When we're 20, we're like invincible.
Right.
I have one of those, and and looking back, it's like, wow, like I should be planning a little bit better with like everything. And so I thought it would be a great place to start with, okay, what is probate? What can you do to sort of avoid probate? And how can you set yourself up for, success in selling a property that needs to be sold? And we do have a team. So not only, attorney, realtor, we have movers, we have, people who are this all-in-one moving, which we'll be doing a live next week. This all-in-one where, if someone has antiques, if someone has, things that are in great condition to sell, what are you going to throw away? What are you going to keep? It's just one of those things where, especially if you've been in your home a long time, or a person has been in a home, sometimes you do have hoarder situations. And other times you just have people who saved everything that they thought was valuable to them. And so having someone who's an expert, I am not an expert in that. That's why we have people on the team who can come in and really evaluate the things that are in the home. So thank you for pointing that out. Did we miss anything?
I think we could talk a little bit further on the estate planning side and talk about some of the other things that are common that I've run into with more of a person still alive, but not competent to sell anymore, maybe a nursing home or those types of things. And having those estate planning documents of power of attorney in place in advance of dementia is a great thing to do. And that's something we would look at in the estate planning side as well. Again, just to avoid the potential headaches down the line of having to go to court and through the probate and family court and get a guardianship or conservatorship put in place. And again, very time consuming, very expensive. It more often than not, that real estate is where all their asset is, right? They don't have much else. Whether they're dead or alive, they may have bills that have to get paid, but we can't get to it because it's all tied up in real estate. Having a power of attorney in place allows the agent to sell it early in the process. Same with having a will in place if it has to go through probate, being able to sell that house much quicker without having to do the license to sell and those types of things frees up the cash that's necessary to actually do the administration of the estate. As opposed to it all being tied up in real estate and family having to front the bills and pay this and pay that and hope to get reimbursed after.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but we do as realtors run into, here and there competency, and it's like, ooh, well, we're not attorneys, so we can't say whether that person is competent or not, but we can think, well, maybe we need some advice from somebody. That, okay, wait a minute, like we need to step back and figure out like, okay, are they able to actually sell the property? So thank you for bringing that up. And that can happen so quickly for somebody. So I always say when you feel healthy, things are going well, that is the time to do this estate planning because it makes life a lot easier and decisions easier to make when you are, in a better place versus, that like sense of urgency or, emergency situation where, things need to get paid or, things need to get sold and you're not in the position to do anything.
Yeah, right. And that's all. It's always about trying to make things smoother and more effective.
All right, so what we'll do is I'll put your information in the comments so people can reach out to the office and reach out to you so that they can start their estate planning. And if they have any probate questions, you are definitely the expert. I stay in my lane as much as possible. I can maybe give definitions and, here and there, but otherwise, I always like to defer to the experts, and you are my expert for this. So I appreciate that. And yeah, if anyone is looking for a realtor who needs to, you just want to know how much the house is worth, obviously I am here to help with that with a no obligation in-home consultation. So feel free to reach out. And we are continuing our In Transition series next week with an all-in-one moving company. So stay tuned for more information on that for next week. All right, thanks so much.